Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I think we'll wait another 2-3 minutes for other people to join as well. We were starting dot at 5. So, yeah. I will be keeping my camera off to kind of preserve bandwidth. But you can see that there is a real person at the other end of this webinar. So cool. But yeah, so like I was saying, I am Varuni. I work as a UX researcher at Poocho. And today we're going to be talking about something that sits right at the center of great product and marketing strategy, right? So that happens to be category research. So this is one of those methods that seems super simple on the surface. But when you actually use it well, it becomes something that can be incredibly powerful. It helps brands understand how people think, how they choose, what they choose, and why, how they compare products outside or inside a category, right? Not just your product. And I'm hoping by the end of this session, you'll have a better idea of what category research really is, when you should use it, what questions it kind of helps you answer, how it differs from other types of research, right? And finally, we'll walk you through a real world case study in the high protein snacks category in particular, using the Poocho platform. So now that I've kind of introduced myself and what this webinar is going to be about, I'm just going to switch off my video in the interest of bandwidth. Yes, and I will very quickly share my screen. Okay, I hope you guys can see my screen now. So, what really is category research, right? That is the question of this evening. So, essentially, category research is studying a specific product or service category to understand its consumers, competitors, and market dynamics. The purpose of this is to identify how people shop, what they value, where competitors are strong or weak, and which gaps your brand can uniquely fill. Simply put, it tells you where a product sits in the real world of choices, right? So, what people expect, what they trade off, and what would actually make them switch brands. Now, this idea of desired outcomes, right? So, what should category research deliver? What is it that you should get out of this? So, when we run a category research study, we're not just asking people if they quote unquote like something, we're also looking for very specific outcomes. One of those outcomes is clarity. So, what defines this category? What do consumers truly expect? What is it that they're looking for when they're reaching for a particular product, brand, whatever it may be? Appeal as well, right? So, what motivates purchase, whether that's as well as usage, loyalty, and even brand switching for that matter? What really appeals to customers about a particular product or brand? So, differentiation as well, right? So, who are the competitors in this particular category, in this market, and how well do they meet their consumer needs? As well as this idea of intent, right? So, you can find out where there are unmet needs, where there are white spaces, and any other sort of areas that are ripe for innovation in a particular category. When you keep all of these four metrics in mind, you are able to turn research into a yes or no decision for product or communications, comms, marketing. And these outcomes tell us whether an idea is essentially worth moving forward with or not. I wanted to talk a little bit more about category research and action as well, right? Not just outcomes, not just what is it about, but also this idea of how this sort of methodology can stretch across different industries as well as business goals, right? So if you were to think about media and publishing, right? Category research here can uncover how Indians, for example, say switch between YouTube, JioCinema, Hotstar, Netflix, and other regional OTTs, right? So another example under this particular industry would be, say, how language shapes choices as well, right? And whether viewing is mobile first and things like that, especially in the context of India. Then you also have this industry of like retail and consumer brands, right? So an example here would be, one can kind of explore how shoppers move between, say, Reliance Smart, DMart, other Kirana shops, apps, like your Blinkits and some Zeptos. how price sensitivity and value packs kind of guide decisions, and so on and so forth. Another industry that I think is very interesting is the automobile industry, right? So here, research can reveal whether there are EV adoption patterns, right? Whether what priorities and what sort of differentiation there is in priorities as far as rural and urban backgrounds are concerned. Whether there is trust in brands like Maruti, Hero, Tata, right? All of these Indian, like very Indian specific sort of brands as well as research in this category. Marketing campaigns is another such sort of business goal, right? So that you could look at, and category researcher can highlight how triggers vary. So value and durability, is that valued in tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 cities versus design and convenience, right? So whether that may be in tier 1, tier 2, whatever that may be, and how messaging should adapt to language, festivals, celebrity endorsements, and cultural context. Essentially, category research can help you reveal how important cultural context may be, especially in the context of, say, tier 2, tier 3 cities, right? Then there's this concept of online marketplaces, right? That's another industry. So you can study how consumers compare, say, an Amazon, Flipkart, Meesho, Nika, and other quick commerce sort of apps, and how filters, right, like fast delivery or price caps, shape browsing paths as well, right? So you're able to kind of figure these things out by doing a deep dive with your consumers. Another thing that is kind of not spoken about as much is this idea of audience segments, right? Because you're not just don't have to necessarily just look at category research as impacting a particular business goal or an industry. You could also be looking to target certain audience segments, right? So in India, segmentation isn't just about age or income. It could also include city tiers, language groups, joint families versus nuclear families, how what kind of smartphone adoption has happened, right? Another example is, let's say, Gen Z, right, in metros or tier 1 cities. They may be app hopping and like deal seeking, right, while older adults prioritize, say, trust, brand heritage, and word of mouth. That is essentially what is category research in action. Here, we're going to be looking at a few things to keep in mind and in your arsenal for whatever kind of category research you may be running, right? From getting started to actually running the study to making sure that your goals are met. So there's this concept of research design. Here, being clear about your business objective is super important. So are you researching to figure out how to expand your product range, launch a new range altogether, or rebrand and reposition existing products, right? So this is where you would also, of course, define your target group. Make sure feedback comes from the right people. So you speak to a diverse group of people, right? So you could be looking at heavy users of your product, light users of your product. You would also perhaps want to speak to people who are non-users, right? And understand from them, okay, why not my product or why someone else's. Here, you would also want to look at, say, you would want to look at your questionnaire, right? You would want to prepare prompts around behavior. You would want to not ask leading questions as well, right? And you would also want to define the category you want to study. So is it a very broad study? Is it a very niche study? When it comes to actually running your study, right? So when you're running your study and let's say you are speaking to people, you would, this may sound very obvious, but it is very important to kind of keep your video on, especially when you're doing online interviews, because you want to be able to capture non-verbal cues as well, right? And conduct enough interviews to kind of spot real patterns and not just one-off anomalies. So for category research in particular, what that essentially looks like is that you must run at least 15 to 20 ideas in order to feel confident in the direction you're going to be moving in. Because one person saying something is a one-off, but then if you hear the same thing across, say, 15, 20 individuals and interviews, then you know that you're kind of maybe moving in the right direction. You also want to look out for actionability, right? So you want to kind of gain insights through this process that very clearly guide your next steps. These are some of your basic must haves. All of this rolls up into insights that teams can use to make confident and evidence backed decisions. I would now like to just switch my screen. Right. So now I'll walk you through a full example. Let's take the example of, say, a D2C brand planning to enter India's high protein snacks market, right? I will now show you how you can run this study on Poocho end to end. Let's say a D2C brand, like I said, wants to launch protein bars, cookies, crunchy chips, and shakes and other snacks. They need to know who buys these, who buys these, what benefits matter to their consumers, how they compare brands, say Right Bite, Yoga Bar, The Whole Truth, My Fitness, all of these. There are so many brands in the market now. Price sensitivity versus trust, and needs of fitness focus but non bodybuilding consumers. Okay, so as you can probably see my screen now, I hope you can. This is what my Poocho dashboard for the recruit module looks like. Okay, it is a combination of what we call as draft studies, live studies, as well as, well, close studies, right? I will now be showcasing what a draft study looks like. So here we go. I've already pre-populated some of this information, so I'll just quickly walk you through some of this. The first step, right, of preparing your study, which is finding participants. We have a whole variety of filters, as you can probably see here to my left, that allow you to build out a diverse panel or sample for your specific category research study. I would want to speak to, say, 20 to 45-year-olds for this particular study and people belonging only to tier 1 cities. I'm also gender agnostic, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave this filter, the gender filter, blank. I've already selected tier 1 cities. Let's say in tier 1 cities, you wanted to speak to people specifically from New Delhi. That's already kind of pre-selected under when you check this box next to tier 1. But you can also manually type in a city's name and select that as well. I'm also looking to speak with people who have some purchasing power, right? This is super important. You want people who are interested in fitness, sure, but also who can actually spend money on these products. So we can select, let's say, salaried employees, right? Under work here, there are students, salaried employees, business owners. I'm going to go ahead and select salaried employees because I wish to speak to people with purchasing power. And also for the purpose of the study, I want to look at other different like filter options, right? So say under interests as well as health. So for interest in particular, I'm going to go ahead and select, say, health and wellness along with lifestyle. And I believe fitness is also an option here, which it is. I wish to speak to people who are somewhat health conscious, right? So they would be interested in health and health and wellness, lifestyle, fitness. And as far as health in particular is concerned, right, I wish to speak to people who have, let's say, a good diet, an excellent diet, as well as a fair diet, right? So this would essentially point me in the direction, hopefully, of participants who do care about their health, right? And in terms of working out as well, I'm going to go ahead and select 3 to 5 times a week and 2 times a week because you want fitness focused people, but also not just like the bodybuilding types, right? So I've gone ahead and selected these filters. As you can see, there are 631 people out of my panel of nearly 37,000 people who fit my criteria. This is plenty. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save and continue. But before I do that, I also want to talk about the diversity of this panel, the one that I have just kind of selected using these filters. I can also very well go into a particular, say, Saurav's profile, and I can have a look at all of these other sort of filters and questions that he's filled out as part of his profile, and just look at all of these other things. I think it helps kind of build a full picture of who these participants are, so that I also build some trust in who I'm going to be speaking with. So I'm going to go ahead and save and continue. Also, as a tip, I usually join my sessions 5 to 10 minutes before session start time, so that I can kind of go through these extended bios as well, right? And make my questions as targeted as possible. It gives me greater insight into the participant I'll be speaking with. So, as you can see, the second step is build your screener. This is where I build out my screener. I've already added some questions that I thought would be relevant to the study that I want to conduct. And here are some of those questions. So, how often do you purchase high protein packaged snacks, right? So, is it weekly? Is it once a month, less than a month, so on and so forth? Which of these high protein snacks have you purchased in the last 3 months, right? Select all that apply. There's different types of questions as well here. So, there's multi select drop down that kind of allows participants to select multiple choices or multiple options rather at the same time. There's also the radio button group, and there's a rating scale if you wish. For example, if I wanted to ask them to uh, rate a particular brand, then I could use this, right? There is also which of the following brands have you purchased in the last 6 months. There's a couple of names here, as well as how knowledgeable do you consider yourself about, say, nutrition labels, macros, protein, just people who are concerned about like their diet in that sense. So, getting an idea of that. And also, in order to kind of further the screener step here acts as like a further sort of verification, right? That you can essentially, sorry, excuse me, it acts as an extra layer of filtering essentially, right? So you can ask all of these questions to the participants who you've selected out of a diverse panel and made it your own sample. And so this question in particular, say the multiple file upload. So upload is a recent screenshot of like a high protein snack that you have purchased, whether that's packaging, order history, bill, whatever. And in order to also, let's say I want to get a better idea of how articulate these participants are, right? So can you tell me a bit about your journey with proteins? Why did you start buying to begin with? Right. So if I just want them to kind of spend some time talking about a particular topic, in this case, protein snacks, right? So I can use this question as well to kind of further verify uh, how knowledgeable or not knowledgeable they are about about this topic. Actually, I'm so sorry. I'm going to go back. I also just want to very quickly talk about the preview feature here. This is what the screener essentially looks like for participants, right? So I definitely review my screener using this step before I kind of move on to the next one. Right. So here, study details. So as you can see, there is a cover image, there's internal title, public title, the about section. This is the section that I kind of use to tell participants what my study is going to be about. You can make it sound extra catchy and fun and use emojis to kind of attract as many applications as possible, right? The note to participants section is essentially, and you can also see this rich text in the about section as well as the note to participants. This is information that goes out to participants I schedule a session with. So for example, if I need them to join using a particular device, or I need them to keep an invoice handy, or if I want them to show me what their daily protein intake kind of looks like on, say, a Fitbit or whatever it may be, to just kind of keep these things handy, this is the section I would use to do that. uh, and you also can set the participant incentive here. very quickly manage your calendar. As the title of this fourth step suggests, this is where you set up your study timeline, talk about, and okay, this is what I wanted to talk about the most. I think for in terms of session duration for a category research study, while we offer different session durations for different purposes, when the purpose is an idea to map a particular category, right? Perceptions, behaviors, comparisons, mental models. I think a 60-minute session is the minimum required to cover like the full depth of this discussion, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just pick 75 to kind of be on the safe side of things. Uh, my working hours is also something that I can stipulate here. This allows participants to also see, hey, okay, do I have any sort of overlap with the researchers' working hours? And that just kind of allows me to find good matches, right, in terms of participants. This is the fifth and last step. As you can see, I am now ready to send invites to participants to my study. I can review all the details of my study before launching it here. You can review your about section, the number of participants shortlisted. You can view your screener as well, participant incentive, right, as well as your timeline. And very quickly, I'm just gonna, yes. So this is essentially what a sample study invite looks like. This is what it looks like, the invite that goes out to participants, right? So I'm just gonna continue editing here. Now that you've kind of seen what a draft study looks like, let me very quickly also walk you through what a live study looks like, right? So for the purpose of this webinar, we did take this particular study live, and this is the overview tab. Essentially, this is where you can see how much money you've spent, sessions that have been successfully completed, start date, etc. You can also see your study schedule here. The invitations tab, I can always add more participants, right, as and when needed to my study essentially. And I do that by clicking, as you can probably tell, the add participants to study tab button here. And under the ongoing tab actually is where all the action is kind of happening. This is where you can essentially see everybody's. Let's say we'll view Nimisha's application, right? Because I have not seen it yet. So I can view her application, I can view her screener as well as her availability, right? She is fairly available for the foreseeable future, which is super helpful. And I also want to very quickly talk about the screening mode feature, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and toggle that on. Here, I am going to be able to essentially view every single participant's screener responses, right? So I can also turn on certain filters, like let's say I am actually interested in, sorry, I'm just gonna very quickly, yes. Right, so diet is super important to me, right, for the purpose of this particular study. I can also just reorder if I want to say understand what their primary motivation along with their diet, right? So it's fair. So what is their primary motivation for consuming high protein foods? Select one. So some people have said to increase protein intake, manage weight, etc. And I can always filter through these as well, right? Because of course, currently I only have so many responses, but when you have many responses, you want to be able to filter for those as well. So that is essentially what the screening mode looks like, and it's super cool. If I want to say now, I think Nimisha is the sort of participant that I wish to speak with. So I'm going to go ahead and just schedule a session with her for say tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. It is as simple as that, right? And let's say since Ananya has not provided her diet rating, I'm just gonna reject her. Yes, so that is essentially what a live study looks like. Under the completed tab, I have not completed any sessions for this particular study. but this is where you would go to see any sessions that have been completed, and it allows you to also download session recordings from this particular tab here, right? As you can probably see this little pop up here on the bottom right of my screen, it says get AI generated insights in Poocho Studio, right? So once you have essentially conducted a session, downloaded the recording, what do you do with it? You can upload it to Studio, Poocho Studio, and yeah, I'm just gonna quickly show you what that looks like as well. Right. So I'm going to very briefly introduce our second module, which, as you saw, is called Poocho Studio. It is essentially an AI powered tool where you can upload session recordings and it automatically generates transcripts with video stamps. Beyond transcription, it can also translate, analyze your data, and present insights using ready to use templates. You can even chat with the AI to get quick, specific answers from your transcripts. For this webinar, we've essentially used an episode of a podcast run by a YouTuber. In this episode, he interviews a fellow protein snack enthusiast, and together they rate different snacks, flavors, protein content levels, etc. We're using this as a mock interview to demonstrate what a real session conducted on Pucho looks like inside the studio module, right? So as you can probably see here on the right, there is a transcript of the session. I can always download it. I can always copy the text as well of the transcript. And in case, let's say, the AI has gotten a particular word wrong, or even a sentence for that matter wrong in the transcript, I can always ask it to regenerate the same. That feature is super cool and very, very helpful, because oftentimes it will spell my name as VAARUNEE. So yeah, it's a cool feature. It helps me in particular. And here, as you can see, there are multiple templates, which there are chapters, there's summary report, and for the purpose of this study in particular, what I found to be super helpful was the summary report template in particular, because it gives me some demographic information about who this person is. There's a transcript summary as well. There are key takeaways, and the key themes here in particular are super, super helpful. So, on prioritizing protein content, right? Let's say that is essentially what the crux of, or one of the cruxes rather, of this session was, or this conversation between this YouTuber and their friend was about. And there are also supporting evidence, right? There are timestamps, so you can, it will jump exactly to that particular part of the conversation, and you can be sure that it is not just quote unquote, like, the AI is not hallucinating, right? It's very much embedded in the actual session and the transcript. Another template that I found super helpful for this particular study was brand insights, right? So there are top brand quotes. They talk about Amazon, Swiggy, Zepto. They talk about Epigamia, Pressery, and again, these are all with timestamps as well as quotes, right? So super, super helpful. Don't have to go looking for all of that. There is the brand analysis section, Epigamia, and all of these different brands that they have discussed, which was the main topic of conversation for this particular podcast episode. And then there's also key insights, right? So there are brand preferences, platforms as well, which one is better, which one is worse, product attributes, perceived quality, flavor preferences, and taste experiences. So this template in particular is super, super helpful for me. Another template that I found very interesting and helpful, I'll very quickly walk you through that as well, is the challenges and pain points. Again, this, inconsistent product quality and undesirable taste and texture, number one sort of challenge that was identified. And again, there's supporting evidence for all of this as well. This template in particular, challenges and pain points, along with, say, the opportunities and desired gains, these two kind of put together helps me focus on actionable insights and kind of decide on what my next steps should be, right? Because desired gains, for example, here kind of reflects what the participant would like to see done differently in the in the products that they tried. And this is where you kind of identify, or I'm able to identify rather, improvements as well as unmet expectations, right, that are directly tied to product performance. So that was essentially it. And you can also use the Q&A feature to send in whatever questions you guys may have. And while you're doing that, I also very quickly just wanted to talk about chat. Uh, I can ask it questions, right? So it was not able to identify speaker one's profession, but however, and it doesn't it does the speaker also didn't speak too much or too often about being a fitness enthusiast, but however, it was able to summarize what the speaker thinks about protein snacks. There's an evaluation criteria, so you can always talk to the AI as well to kind of get an idea of what they're talking about in the session without, if you're not able to find it in the transcript or the templates. Yeah. Okay, it looks like we have our first question in, and the question is, how do I know if something is a real opportunity or just one person's opinion? That is a good question. So, I think it's safe to say that a real opportunity shows up across multiple interviews, not just one interview. So, you'll hear it phrased differently, but I think the theme would remain the same, right? So, if you're hearing a pattern from different people from who live different lives, different contexts, it's usually meaningful if it's something that you start seeing across interviews, essentially. Okay, there is another question. Should category research be done before or after product research? This is a very good question, and I think it's safe to say that it's important to do category research or conduct a category research study before, because category research sets the foundation, right? So it tells you what really matters in the space. Product research builds on top of that by validating your specific solution. Okay, there's another question. Should category research be repeated? Yes, I would say category research should be repeated, especially when categories evolve, right? So you want to kind of refresh it whenever consumer behavior shifts or there are new competitors in a particular category, marketplace, whatever, or you're about to make a big strategic decision. You want that decision to be informed by some form of research, right? You want it validated, essentially. And I think there's another question. Okay, how can I trust the responses in screeners that they are actually my target audience? This is a good question. As far as Poocho is concerned, we have this concept of verified profiles. So those are profiles with, say, blue ticks, right? And that is our teams have kind of gone through their social media links that they attach to their profiles to kind of further verify their identity, right? So you can filter kind of using this particular filter, which is verified links. Then, as I also kind of showcased, right, while I was setting up my study, that as part of your screeners, you can always ask for file uploads, whether that's, say, you're asking about a particular product, so invoices, whatever it may be, because you want to be sure that they've actually bought your product or, say, your competitors for that matter. So you can add that. You can also add the record audio question to kind of get an idea of how articulate they may be about a particular topic. And as far as conducting sessions on Poocho is concerned, you can always kind of, if there are deal breaker questions, you can ask those, say, in the first 10 minutes of your session. And, if you feel like this person may have lied about any sort of information that they're giving, the participant is not being honest, then you can always cancel this session in the first 10 minutes or so. Yeah. Okay, I think those are the questions for this evening. So I am just going to leave you all here and say thank you so much for taking the time to join today's session and for your thoughtful questions. I really hope that this webinar has helped you get prepped and ready to go for your next category research study. If you have any questions about the product or any processes that we kind of walked you through today, feel free to reach out to us. And yeah, I guess happy category researching, everyone.